This episode is powered by Hubhopper, a platform all about podcasting.
So, welcome to another episode of Podcast Per Charcha. In this very special episode, we are delighted to have Aakanksha Saxena as our guest. She's a very experienced senior professional from the media fraternity and ex-RJ. She's heading the podcast vertical of One Digital Entertainment, that is known by the name pod.one, and she has worked with 25 plus influencers, YouTubers, for example, Lisa Mangaldas, that's the sex podcast, and Up Sejal, I guess Sejal Kumar, right? She's a YouTuber, and
Yes.
these social podcasts, and these podcasts are ranking in the top charts. Plus, she herself is a YouTuber, she's a podcaster, and the list is too big, too many USPs. So, Aakanksha, it's a great honor, it's a privilege to have you on Podcast Per Charcha.
Thank you so much. That was indeed a very exciting and energetic introduction for me.
Anyways, before we start off, first thing I would like to know, you have worked with so many influencers. जैसे कुछ मैंने भी example ली, like Lisa Mangaldas and Sejal Kumar and loads of, and one more YouTube channel, Blush. उनका शायद अभी जो है audio version में podcast शुरू है, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
So, can you share your experience in transforming the YouTubers into podcasters? As in, they are more cracked, coming in front of camera, and this is something very different experience. जब आपका सिर्फ आवाज सुनी जा रही है. So, can you share your experience if that's possible?
Okay, so when I joined pod.one, luckily my first project was launching Lisa's podcast as a Spotify.
That was the first one.
That was my first podcast. And let me just give you a background that I started working on podcast in the year, I think 2017. At that time, taking out your RSS feed and ingesting that on Apple Podcast was a task.
Yes.
So I had the knowledge of how podcasts work, but yes, it was difficult to basically educate YouTubers, influencers, content creators, and especially the influencers who fall in the category of 30-second reel or 50-second reel, to educate them on creating a long-term or a long format content. So for Lisa, it was my first initial thought that a task was given that Lisa doesn't really have time and we have to create podcast with her. She's not going to invest time. So we devised a strategy that why not create her YouTube videos in an audio-friendly manner. And that's when I devised this strategy of adding Vox Pop to it and using her YouTube videos as an answer to it.
Okay.
Somehow we finally landed on an agreement that she would record fresh episodes, and she got intrigued with podcast. And if you will see that most of the podcasts in podcasting industry are interview based.
Yes.
Which at sometimes I also call it that you are backing on someone else's content. Okay, but in this podcast, I was very sure that it will really work well as a solo cast or as a monologue podcast. It indeed requires a lot of work. I would say the maximum of the work was done by Lisa only, and we were just helping her out and giving her a nudge that was required. And Spotify made it an exclusive, and it gave that kind of promotion and marketing which was required. And let me just tell you that Lisa's podcast had remained on #1 charts for almost 365 days.
Yes.
And I cannot reveal the statistics, but yes, I know because I work with a lot of creators and I see podcast download statistics of various creators. The number of Lisa's podcast streams and downloads is way above any podcast which is available on Spotify.
Oh, that's really great. That's great. And as you told, the challenging part, because जैसे लोग सिर्फ उस चीज को सुन रहे हैं. In terms of production, it might be, you just need a microphone, but in terms of engagement, I think it's more challenging because आप जब when you're in front of the camera, so many things editing में होती है, आप सामने आते हो, there is a facial kind of expression and everything, but जो आपको लोग सिर्फ सुन रहे हैं, that's the thing, वहाँ पे और challenging हो जाता है किसी को engage करके रखना.
Okay, so I'll give you, these are the tips basically, which I give to a lot of podcasters who are launching their podcast, or people who are not from YouTube background, like a lot of life coaches, psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, or maybe sports enthusiasts who want to create their podcast. Number one, if you are an expert of your respective field, don't think others are.
Yes.
Whenever you are creating your podcast, it is audio, so always support your content with relevant and very simple examples from their life. Even if you're talking about sex, or you're talking about mental health, or you're talking about sports or fitness, try and deep dive into the life of that one person who is going to be your listener, and think from his or her perspective that what he or she wants to listen and what is their life, and then just frame out your podcast. I think it is going to turn out very engaging.
Yes, definitely. And further, working with Sejal Kumar, if you can share your experience, आप थोड़ा बता सकते हो उसके बारे में.
Okay, so working with Sejal, she's a millennial, but she has a very Gen Z kind of vibe. I must say it was a bit difficult to work with Sejal, but at the same time, it was very interesting because she is a very, very invested creator in her content, and that's why it makes really difficult or challenging, the word should be challenging, to such creators who are very invested in their content. So sometimes whenever there is a clash, you really need to convince them that why you're suggesting something like that. But at the same time, this creative process is beneficial for both, not only for the creator, but for the podcast as well, and ultimately for the listeners too.
Definitely. Okay, so coming on this, we have another case study. That is the Blush YouTube channel. Unka when I have gone through the content, they have just recently launched. So as of now, you're working for that, but you're strategizing that particular content for them, right?
So if all of you who are watching me or listening me, there is a very popular YouTube channel called Blush, which is part of One Digital Entertainment. And you will see very engaging and very women-oriented stories on this YouTube channel. And recently, we have launched a very beautiful story called Ghar on this. Two very talented actors, Shreya Gupta and Karan Jotwani, they have acted in this movie. And there is a central theme to this particular episode that's called Ghar. And this was an opportunity for me to launch Blush Audio, because as much as people want to engage in visual medium, similar amount of people want to engage in audio medium as well. But it becomes very challenging when it is a video and you have to trans it like an audio. Then I took up the challenge, and we have created a very beautiful audio episode of this Blush channel. And we are determined to keep on ingesting new episodes every 10-15 days with new stories. This falls in the category of fiction. And, fiction makes it very difficult to create an audio because there are various characters, there are various voices, and there are some things which can only be visualized. You cannot create an audio of it, but challenge accepted, and we create audio part of it. All I can say is that you can go to Spotify, search for Blush Audio, and listen to this episode called Ghar.
So yes, definitely. But one thing to add, I can feel the challenging part of it when such stories, जब ये audio part में convert होती है, तो यहाँ पे, as you told about fiction, जो यूट्यूबर्स होते हैं, they also have to get into voice acting. थोड़ा expression वगैरह हल्के में उसमें ज्यादा ध्यान देना होगा, because in form of a drama, in form of a fiction, so कहीं ना कहीं voice acting, voice over में भी थोड़ा बहुत काम होता होगा, voice modulation, lot of aspects, right?
Absolutely. In this, if I take an example of Blush, fortunately we were working with actors, so it was easier for us. But in fiction, yes, definitely your voice modulation, there is a bit of enactment that you have to do without expressions, but with voice only. That is a challenge.
Yes. So coming on your particular podcast, you started with a channel, Recreate With Me. Your personal experience as a podcaster. So क्या आप उसकी journey share कर सकते हो? The concept of this particular channel and how that converted into a podcast, if you can just share your experience as a podcaster.
Okay, so to share the journey of this channel.
One thing, sorry, I forgot to mention, in this span of less than 6 months, that crossed 1 lakh subscribers, your particular channel, Recreate With Me. So it was a mixture of shorts and long form of videos. And recently it transformed into a podcast. That is again Recreate With Me, right?
Correct. So the tagline of my channel, Recreate With Me, says infusing life stories with a dash of fashion in it. Okay. So this can be a very useful tip for everyone who are planning to get into content creation. I wrote 3 of my strong points, and I always felt that fashion, not exactly like trends, but how to create fashion from the existing things is my strong point. Voicing has always been something I'm God gifted, and I got the opportunity to work in the radio industry for 12, 13 years. So I was able to hone my skills. And third is creating stories, like weaving them in stories. So I create a triangle, and which is fashion, voice, and stories. And I created my channel that's called Recreate With Me. It is also like a reflection of my own life, as I recreated my life post my divorce. I recreated my life as a single mother, and how I recreated my life when I lost my job also during the mid-pandemic. So everything, it's like a mix of motivation, personal stories. When I started putting my shorts on YouTube, I think like within 2 months, most of my shots were reaching like 3 million and 4 million views. And I started getting a lot of DMs on my Instagram, where a lot of women started sharing their stories and their struggles and how they see me as a figure with whom they would like to basically share their stories. And that's when I thought, let me create a podcast that's called Recreate With Me podcast. I started off with as like a mental health and wellness podcast, because I have seen mental health issues personally in my life, in my family very closely. And I felt that this is something that I should do. The only tweak that I did in this is, instead of just going as like a interview-based podcast, I create a story around any issue or any real life situation that I receive. I create a story, an engaging story around it. And then I get a mental health expert or a psychiatrist or a psychologist to give their expert opinion on this podcast. So this is the journey of my channel and my podcast. Like I say, I've said this in my shorts also, और ये गीता में भी लिखा हुआ है कि सक्सेस के लिए आपको भाव, as in you know, your feeling, भाव, मेहनत और ग्रेस की जरूरत होती है. ग्रेस as in the thing that you're adding to it, भाव जो आपके अंदर से भाव निकल के आ रहा है, और आपकी मेहनत. और जब इसमें वक्त सही आपका आ जाता है तो obviously you get success.
Definitely. It's been more than a decade you have been a part of radio industry. Back in 2005, I guess you started with Rajasthan Patrika, then Dainik Bhaskar, and in before 2019, I guess you joined Fever 104 FM. So what your insights on the adaptation of audio and digital version? जिस तरह से growth हुई है पिछले कई सालों में, because you have been a part of radio industry, and what I say, this particular podcast, specifically the audio version of it, regarding the growth, regarding the industry, future इसका, अगर आप अपनी insights इसके बारे में share कर सकते हो.
I think radio industry is like the post office department of India. And this I've said it in one of my radio shows also. If you will see that in this digital era, post office department still exists. Do you know why? Because they have adapted time and again with a lot of things. They not only offer you a facility of sending one thing from one place, but they also offer you a lot of other banking facilities also. And hence, post office is adapted. Similarly, radio has adapted to various years and various situations. And that's why, if you will see, a lot of radio jockeys in the current scenario are not only great actors, great anchors, but they are great influencers also. Because radio is one industry where people work in people are multitasking, especially the programming, like as in the radio jockeys, producers, copywriters, they all are multitasking. There is no boundary when they work, and that's why they have easily adapted to the digital trends. Talking about the podcast trend, number one, people always confuse that if you're good in radio, you're going to be good in podcast. If you have a great voice, that you're going to have a great podcast. These are absolutely two different mediums. Why? Because radio is a medium which keeps you energetic. Okay, unless it is something designed to make you sleep, that's a different thing. But podcast as a medium is designed to give you that calmness. And that's why you will see that the packaging and the styling of both the mediums are very different. I would never package my show the way I package my radio show. I package my podcast in a different manner, because I always consider it that it's only one person listening to my podcast in his ear. So it should not sound like good morning.
Yes.
That will not work in podcast, but that might work in radio, because radio is appointment listening still at the moment, and podcast is a different medium. So if you want to grow in either of the medium, they have different insights.
Okay, further, I would like to add your particular podcast. If we discuss about this particular segment, that is podcast monetization. In your podcast, Recreate With Me, I could see that you have got sponsorship from Flying Pepper, right?
No, actually, if you will see that it is not sponsored by, it is in collaboration with.
Collaboration, okay.
Yes, so it was about a collaboration, and to be very honest, they did not pay me. But
Okay.
yes, since my YouTube channel is monetized and I get good views on my podcast on YouTube, so in a way, I have monetized my podcast, but it is yet to get monetized on any other audio platforms, as there is no monetization in India on any audio platform.
Okay, now coming on my favorite topic, as in ये पिछले वाले podcast में भी हमारी लंबी discussion हुई थी. I did the last podcast with Neeti. I guess you also met Neeti. If I'm not wrong, I saw some snaps of कोई Spotify का event था मुंबई में. I don't know. मेरी शायद पता नहीं, LinkedIn में वो आते रहते, feeds आती रहती, तो maybe I saw you and आप शायद मिले थे. You also attended that
Exactly.
event.
Yeah. So recently there was an event by Spotify at their Mumbai office, and they had invited various creators and agencies, and I was representing One Digital Entertainment. And yes, I've met Neeti a couple of times. So yeah, you can say she's a good acquaintance and more like a friend also.
Okay, nice. Okay, so coming on this particular topic, जैसे आपने कहा कि अभी ऑडियो में कहीं पे भी जो in terms of monetization अभी नहीं शुरू हुआ, लेकिन जैसे मैंने अपने पिछले वाले एपिसोड में भी डिस्कस किया था, the announcement of podcast feature by YouTube, number 1. Number 2, YouTube म्यूजिक में जो पॉडकास्ट आने वाले धीरे धीरे करके, अभी क्या उन्होंने जैसे YouTube हैज अनाउंस्ड कि आपकी जो भी प्लेलिस्ट है दैट्स अ पॉडकास्ट, आप उसको डिफाइन कर दो, कन्वर्टेड इनटू अ पॉडकास्ट, मतलब आपको सिर्फ डिफाइन करना है दिस इज अ पॉडकास्ट विद अ पॉडकास्ट कवर. अब YouTube म्यूजिक में जैसे यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स में तो ऑलरेडी डिफाइन हो चुका है, बट ये हमेशा होता है, पहले चीज यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स में आती है, उसके बाद फिर धीरे धीरे करके इट्स डाइसी. आज भी हो सकता है, कल भी हो सकता है, मैंने पहले भी कहा था, और ये कभी भी हो सकता है कि इंडिया में भी यूट्यूब म्यूजिक में पॉडकास्ट लिस्ट होने शुरू हो जाएंगे. सो डू यू सी इट एज अ great development in this particular space, adoption of podcast by YouTube plus YouTube music?
See, definitely, if you will see the statistics, that podcast is a growing medium, and every medium has a life cycle. There was a time when radio was a very growing medium and everybody wanted to be a radio jockey, and the ads were flooded in radio. And then the digital medium entered. The digital medium had its own era. If you will see that now, the digital medium, I would not say at its decline, but there is a stagnancy.
Yes.
It's like now the medium has reached here, from here, where to go? Okay. Similarly, in podcast, the medium is definitely growing. But if you will see, and if you want monetization to happen, I think people would want more content. And if people would want more content, all these mediums want more content creator, that is more podcasters.
Yes.
Because then it's like a vicious circle. If you want to consume content, you want a library of content. If you want a library of content, you need more podcasters. If you want more podcasters to be there, you need to gratify them with something called monetization. And if you want monetization, then again, you want listeners. So it's a circle. Okay, it's a vicious circle. YouTube entering into the field of podcasting with ingesting your podcast with RSS feed in YouTube Music and specifying categorically your podcast as a podcast playlist. It in itself says that yes, podcasting is going to be a big thing in the coming time.
Yes, because as you told about monetization, because starting from blogs or video, आज भी जो the major chunk of revenue apart from the sponsorships और बाकी सारी चीज होती है affiliate marketing, आज भी अगर बात करी जाए Google AdSense, a lot of chunk of revenue is coming from there, whether you talk about blog और अगर आप videos की बात करें. So इस aspect में मैं कह रहा था.
Correct. So for YouTube, see, one benefit is there that YouTube has already got a huge bank of consumers.
Yes.
As YouTube recently, I saw statistics that they receive nearly 2 billion of views each day. Billion. And we are 8 billion. So 2 billion of views every day. That means just imagine the amount of consumption that they are having. Okay. So this increases your chances to get your content monetized or get more views and make more money.
Definitely. So Google's next, what they are targeting for, it's the listeners, because major chunk of traffic, जिन लोगों को पढ़ना है, I'm not talking about ebook or any other type of content, those who want to consume the information through blogs, या फिर कुछ, if I talk about the viewers, the major chunk of traffic is with YouTube and Google. So I can say with YouTube Music and the adaptation of podcasts, their next target is listeners. This is what I can predict, जो मैं analyze कर रहा हूँ अपने समय से.
Correct, because see, I would not say that people are bugged up with visuals. It's just that it becomes easier when the medium is non-intrusive. So you just can listen to it and there is no need of visuals. So it becomes like another feather to your content, that it is not taking your live attention, but it is taking your passive attention and it is giving you some value also.
Yes, rightly said that nothing is going to be saturated. ये इसको कह सकते हैं एक अलग, a different way of consuming the content, as in just listening to it. क्योंकि saturation कभी कोई चीज में नहीं होगी. आज भी लोग newspaper पढ़ते हैं, आज भी लोग किताब पढ़ते हैं. Everything is existing, but I can say another way of consuming the content, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I shall say, Aakanksha, it was great to have you on Podcast Per Charcha. It was great discussing with you, and thank you so much for being a part of Podcast Per Charcha. And again, I wish you all the best for all your ventures, everything, for your Recreate With Me podcast. And it was amazing to have, one of the very rare charchas we have, which I never want to end, but there is a foundation of time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I really like that, the way you are endorsing your podcast wearing a t-shirt.
This is the first time. This is the first time, by the way.
Your logo, Podcast Per Charcha. Like I say this to a lot of creators of mine, that one thing that they lack in their podcast is, besides content, is promotion. Shamelessly promote your own content. There is no harm in promoting your own hard work. You have worked on it. Yes. Promote it on all the platforms. Ask the people to give it a listen. Okay, don't ask it to your relatives and friends. I never did that with my channel. Always put it and give them reason to listen to it. Give them a valid reason and promote it. Thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
Thanks a lot.